I mean, that's Bobby Lee, Ike Barinholtz,
PNP.
Daniel. Yeah, Key and Peele, absolutely. Yeah, all those guys were there.
¿Quién es ese hombre holding up the bottle? Look a little closer, cigar and Moscato. An actor in improv coming from Chicago. Outdoor, make way for Paul Vato.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Paul Vato, and welcome to Paul Vato Presents, where my guest today is Brandee Stilwell, comedic actor, writer, author. Let's get to know Brandee. Brandee, welcome, and thank you so much for doing my show.
Of course. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
It is my absolute pleasure. This is Fireside. If you're not familiar with it, I'm glad that you were able to log on with no problems. It's one of the owners is Mark Cuban, and I think it's a great app for what we do, podcasting and all this great stuff. So thank you for playing along. And we were trying to figure out how we actually met, because our paths have crossed for many years. And I think we figured out it must have been at MADtv.
Yeah, definitely, because we were torn between MADtv or iOS. Rest in peace. But I think I knew you I met you, or I would see you on the floor during tapings at MADtv, and then years later I would run into you at one of my theaters at iOS. Rest in peace.
Rest in peace. I love how you put that in your bio. Anytime you mention IO, it's followed with rest in peace.
That was iOS with my church for so many years. I mean, everything in LA is expensive, but you could, if you knew where to park in Hollywood, you could park for free. If you were a student or performer, you either got in discounted or for free. And then the bar there was so insanely cheap. And there was nothing else like it in town. And so if you didn't have anything to do on a Friday or Saturday night and you couldn't get a hold of your friends, you could just go to IO and you would always know somebody. And you could spend all night laughing your ass off and hardly pay any money. It was fantastic while it lasted.
It really was. And for us, it was like a second home, because when I got to LA in right around 2000, it was like going somewhere where you may not know the people, but we knew the comedy. We started doing our show Touched by an Anglo there when we first came out, and that's how we got, agents and managers and all that. But it was like a little slice of Chicago where we felt, comfortable. LA can be overwhelming and daunting, but because of IO, it was everything that you said. And right, we were able to drink for relatively cheap and park where we, when LA is such a driving city, that it was nice to have something like that. So that's wonderful. How did you end up on MADtv?
I was working at a post house called Post Logic. Rest in peace. Everything's dead and gone. But I was like the point guard for 3 different shows at Post Logic, which was, because I'm super old, Mr. Show. David Cross, Bob Odenkirk, such a phenomenal show. The Jeff Foxworthy Show and MADtv. And the Jeff Foxworthy Show stole me because they didn't have like a post supervisor. And I went and did that. They snagged me like in the second season of it, and then it got canceled. Then I took a job at some other post house. I was only there 2 weeks. Everyone got really mad at me because it was like Super Bowl time, and I filled out the squares, and then I won. I won the big lottery on the square thing, and then I got a job at MADtv. So I took my money and left. But in my interview, the associate post producer, her name was Charlotte. She had left MADtv. She was leaving and I was her liaison at Post Logic. before I'd left for Foxworthy, and she had reached out to me because she was leaving. She was trying to save her marriage, and had brought me in to replace her because I knew the show, and then I also knew how to post supervise. And so I went in and I ended up meeting with Fax and Adam, who created MADtv. And it was, I make a lot of bad decisions, wrote a book about it. And that particular day, I had on a lime green cardigan, like Argyle sweater that I'd never worn before, with like the shell underneath it. And so there was like little floaties that kept coming off of it, little flyaways, and they were getting caught in my mouth and in my eyelashes, and I'm trying to like pretend like this is normal. And if I got up from the couch, you could see where I had been. There was like a body outline of like my back of the green Argyle. But I was so distracted in my interview with them because they had like a 3 foot tall bust of Elvis, and it was made out of gun ammo and cigarette butts. And so between the floaties, trying to like talk and like pull like weird fibers out of my mouth, I'm still obsessed with gun ammo, cigarette butt, Elvis Presley. And I kept getting up in the middle of my interview, like also trying to like not have stuff in my face and mouth, but still like, what the hell is this? Because this is the most brilliant thing I've ever seen. And I think they appreciated my weirdness for everything that was going on around them. And they had toys in their office, and, I have toys here, and it's just, that's who I am. And that's how I got it. I think it was a shoe-in, but they were also like, with the cardigan sweater incident, I think they were kind of afraid of me. But I ended up being at MADtv from episode 315 to episode 922. So I was there post supervisor, associate post producer during that time. So well over 100 episodes.
Wow. So from like from what year to what year were you there?
You're asking me to do math? Yeah. It was the late 1900s, Paul.
I love that. The late 1900s. Yes, it was. No, it was the mid 2000s, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, maybe you were. Yeah. No. Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. Let's not do math. Well, I'm trying to figure out if mid 2000s is actually like 2050 and it hasn't happened yet, or if we can say 2000s for 2005, 2006, because I feel like that's about when I was there, hanging out with Bobby Lee.
Yeah, I mean, that's Bobby Lee, Ike Barinholtz, Daniel. Yeah, Key and Peele, absolutely. Yeah, all of those guys were there.
Rob Peterson.
Even though I was post, we did pre-tapes, we would shoot on every Thursday we shot pre-tapes. Every other Friday was pre-tapes. And then, so not only would I have to get an episode out and on the air, but I would also have to, we would also have to get the pre-tapes edited for the playback on every other Friday night for a live taping to get the laugh track. I mean, we still sweetened it with a sweetener, but the base of it was a laugh track. And, if the audience had been lined up since 3:00 that afternoon, we'd start taping at 5:30. And here I'm trying to play a sketch back at like 11. Nobody was laughing.
Those could be some long days. At least I was always able to go and hang out and maybe take a nap in Ike's dressing room or use the facilities in Bobby's. Ike was always like, don't use the bathroom here, use it in Bobby Lee's, which I thought was always fun. So that's, I think that must have been when we first met. And then of course, Improv Olympic in the rest in peace in the latter years. Did you study at the IO or Second City as well, or Groundlings, or did you do any of the LA improv schools?
I did. I've studied at Groundlings, UCB, graduated from IO West, rest in peace, and Second City. So yeah, alumni.
Wow. Did you ever do anything in Chicago? I mean, I know you're, I think, from the Midwest, but you didn't do anything in Chicago.
No, I came after I left KU, I did 2 seasons in film school in Rockport, Maine. And between seasons at film school, I did an internship at New York City. But again, I had weird, dumb stuff that would happen to me all the time. And even the people in New York were like, fuck Seinfeld or Stilwell, because I mean, I could go to lunch and come back with like pigeon poop on my face and my head, and try and give a homeless person like, here, I have part of my egg salad sandwich. Do you want some? Only to find out that they hated egg salad and they would just chuck it back at me. So I always had something. But the thought of doing comedy was not, I was like, I'm going to be a writer. I'm going to be a producer. I don't know what I'm going to be. But I kind of fell into post. And then that's how, so when I ended up in LA, everyone's like, oh, well, post. And I was like, I don't want to do post. But that's where the beginning of my career had started, was in post-production.
What were you doing then on shows like American Dad and Family Guy? Was this in post as well, or were you writing on those shows?
After I left MADtv, Alex Borstein, they had Fox had just resurrected Family Guy from the graveyard. And so they were starting it back up after it being dormant for 2 years. So I was there. Gosh, I can't even tell you the numbers. I came in on episode 301. But I have no idea where I ended, because it's animation and it's you could so I was a script supervisor. So I could be going in, we would table read on a Tuesday, record on Thursday, but then I'd also have an animatic, a blue script, a pink script, the different episodes at different stages that we had to do, pick up. Or if Adam West didn't live in Los Angeles, I think he lived in Indiana, and so he would fly in. And so I would just have everything banked and organized. So I would sit in the record booth with Seth, and it was just Seth, myself, and our recordist. And then but I don't know how many episodes I did. I do know at one point my biggest claim to fame was, I think we had counted, right when I left, I was part of recording over 11,000 lines of dialogue, and I only missed one line, and it was Adam West. And I was picking up, he was getting ready to leave, and Seth asked me a question, and I was answering it, and then somebody else asked me another question, and I was trying to get back to Adam, and he had left. But luckily, we were doing a pickup on a Friday, and he wasn't flying back out until Tuesday. So he came back in on Monday. So it was but still, I missed one out of 11,000 lines of dialogue.
Wow. That's pretty impressive. That's amazing.
Had so much, that, it was wonderful, as the script supervisor. And then the people that would come through there were, it was lots of stories came out of there.
I'll bet. Any other interesting shows that you worked on that you'd like to tell us about, or any stories that you may have experienced in any of these other mostly comedic shows that you've been a part of?
Well, I will say, anyone that knows Seth MacFarlane knows he's total germaphobe. And Ron Jeremy came in. Now, I hadn't seen his films, just, reputation. And the kitchen at Family Guy, I don't know if it's still like that now, but back in the day, the kitchen at Family Guy was it's like walking into a 7-Eleven. If you wanted a king-size Butterfinger, there was a whole box full of it. There were, any kind of, if you couldn't go to lunch, there'd just be things of soup, soda, but just mainly candy everywhere. And Seth had tugged my shoulder to be Ron Jeremy was we're trying to get him to leave. He wasn't leaving, and he kind of walked over to the kitchen, and there was a big bucket, a Smart and Final kind of bucket of pretzels, but it had one of those scoops in it. and, pre-COVID. And he's just talking. Ron Jeremy is just talking to us. And again, we're like, please just, okay, go. You're done. Go. And he walks over to the bucket of pretzels and just unscrews it, pulls out the scooper, puts it down, and is just holding the bucket with his hands. And I'm watching Seth's face because it's Ron Jeremy. Like, you know where those fucking hands have been. Like,
oh, we know.
And we're all like, oh my God. But he's just talking. It's a Tuesday, like whatever. He doesn't, and we're all like, oh my God. And so he finally puts it back down and the scooper back in and the lid, at least he put the lid back on. And we're like, okay, bye. And he goes to leave. And Seth is like, you don't touch it, but burn it to the ground. And I think it was like November or something, because we still had Halloween tape and stuff that was out, like Crime Scene. And so I just went and got like duct tape and sealed it like a tomb, and then just wrapped Crime Scene all around it. And I'm like, put a little sign up. Ron Jeremy's hands have been all up in here. Stay away, do not touch. And you're like, oh God. And I think it sat on the shelf there for like a year because people were like kind of mesmerized. And then finally one day Seth was like, that shit is nasty. Just someone throw it out. And I think one of the PAs went and got rid of it. So
amazing. Well, I think that was his MO, because I'm trying to remember where I first met Ron Jeremy, and I guess everyone has maybe some Ron Jeremy stories. And I want to say it was probably like at the upfronts, if that's what they're called, for MADtv, because maybe he'd made an appearance, so he'd been invited, or maybe if you're part of some organization, you're allowed to go. But basically, they were like, he just comes here to eat. He just, so he doesn't have to pay for food. So I think that was kind of his MO, is he would just hang out, whenever there was some kind of Emmy event, or I don't know if he was a member of the Academy. I mean, he is an actor in film, like you said, film.
I think after that, Seth was like to the writers, no, because we would do stunt casting. So if somebody wrote a joke with Ron Jeremy, you would bring in that actor. If it was the cast of 90210, you would bring in, Jenny and Tori and Jason, to do that. So he was just like, no more Ron Jeremy. I mean, towards the end, there were several people that were just banned from coming, and he was one of them. Well, I'm like, now I need a Silkwood shower just talking about it. I'm like, I can't get the water hot enough. Yeah.
Well, I also not to keep bringing him up, but I also ran into him when I first started dating. She's my ex now, and we were at Rock and Roll Ralph's. And I see Ron. I'm sure I just ran into him, but probably at this MADtv event. So I go, hey, Ron. He goes, hey, Paul. We just chat. I go, oh, this is I think I said girlfriend. This is my girlfriend, Sarah. And, and then afterwards, and he's like, oh, hi. I think she shook her hand. And I was like, whoa, okay. Well, she shook his hand. I didn't stop her because we just started dating. Who am I to say no? And then when he left, she goes, how do you know Ron Jeremy? And I go, wait a minute, how do you know Ron Jeremy? Because I'm like, how did she know who he was? Like, she must have been some kind of pervert. So yeah, those are a few stories. And then I last ran into him maybe 3 years ago, and probably not a good advertisement. I had him hold one of my cigar boxes, and we took a photo at an after party. But this is probably maybe 4 years ago in LA. And then, haven't really seen him since. Who else was banned? Can you tell us who else was banned?
I think he's in prison now. I don't know.
I believe so. I think so. Anyone else that you can tell us who was banned from Family Guy or?
No, okay. I would only say Ron Jeremy. He's in prison. I just remember Gene Simmons came in, and he was just being so gross, and like not like no one was impressed. Like you're like, huh. But I just remember in the record booth we had glass windows. I mean, they're soundproof and everything, but he was talking and everything, and he had leaned up against it. And when he walked away, there was like a weird hair stain on the glass. And we were like, leave it. So I think it was there for the longest time, because even the cleaning crew at night, they wouldn't go, they didn't go into if they went into the record booth, it was just to like pull the trash out. Like they didn't, so it was only the people that like knew, that saw it, that was there. There was like this weird hair stain, that a Gene Simmons weird hair stain that was on the glass, and it was there for the longest time. So if I walked by it, I was always like, ah.
What memories? What memories? I mean, yeah, there were probably people like that, but I think that you also met maybe some wonderful actors and comedians, because I saw a photo of you with Betty White, and I think I saw that somewhere. What was, were you guys friends? How did you guys get to know each other? Or was she also banned from the shows? No, I'm kidding.
We had her banned. You filthy potty mouth. No. Every time I worked with Betty White, and I'm going to cry, sharp as a tack, smartest one in the room, and she was just so quick-witted. And so I met her at, she came into Family Guy a few times, and I would always cry because, she was such a huge, like an animal lover and humanitarian, and did so much, charity for animals. And that like always would, it just meant so much to me. And then for her, she would always put her hand on my arm and be like, Brandee, you gotta keep getting me these jobs, because I got a lot of animals to feed. I'm like, I'm on it. And then I met her again. I worked on a stop motion animated show called Glenn Martin DDS. It was with Catherine O'Hara. That's why I took the job, because Catherine O'Hara was on it, and Kevin Nealon. But she came in, and I had done a tournament, an improv tournament. It was a quartet tournament, I think, at IO.
Okay.
And so it was like a 4-person team, and it was just, single elimination, like, it was like an NCAA basketball bracket, to kind of get to the last two. And we had called ourselves My Dinner with Betty, and it's a picture of her eating a hot dog. And I was just like, and I brought in that improv poster of My Dinner with Betty. It was like a one-off team, and she signed it for me. And I was just like, oh my God. I mean, I have her, she's signed a couple of things, but that meant so much to me. She was a good person, just a good, you always hear, don't meet your heroes. And trust me, I met one of mine at Family Guy, who, let's just say, his initials are CC, and he was on SNL. And he was just awful, but and it destroyed me as a human being, because I had such a crush on him as a child. But then, here's Betty White, and when you hear that saying, "Don't meet your heroes," that always disappoint, blew my expectations. Like everything you would hope and want her to be, she was and more. So yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. Well, maybe one day we can talk about CC, but I'd rather leave this on a high note. I know. I was like, wait a minute, is it CK? No. Yeah. I know exactly what you mean now. And that's such a shame, because I have heard horror stories, but it's wonderful that you have this great connection with Betty White. Because I mean, I never met her, but it's one of those big regrets in life where I wish I would have. Because I love old people, to begin with, but to have met somebody like Betty White, who was such an icon and a brilliant actor, and then became a brilliant comedic actor, and like I said, so sharp.
That's how, being a Family Guy is how I met Carrie Fisher, and she played Peter's boss, Angela, and she was always a handful, but it's fucking Carrie Fisher, and it just meant so much to me. And we had Phyllis Diller and Charles Durning, and it was just like, oh my God, every now and then, it was a job, and there was a lot of, drama and heartache that came with that job and disappointment. But at the same time, every now and then you'd be like, holy shit, like here's Charles Durning, like teaching me how to make sailor knots, because he'd carry string, or like a little rope in his pocket. And he would he would be waiting in our little lounge area before he'd go in, he'd be like making sailor knots and like, come here, let me show you how to make sailor knots. And I was never any good at it, but you know, it was just those kind of things that, you know, I will take with me to my grave. And you know, you got to be like, how freaking lucky am I? I'm so lucky that, you know, this amazing person, and you know, it's teaching me how to make a sailor knot. So
wow, amazing. Now it's so weird. It's great that you know like who all these people are, you know, like Phyllis Diller and things like that, because you look so young that it's like, how do you know all these people? But that's amazing.
my whole body sounds like a haunted ship. So yeah.
Well, that's wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing and sharing a lot of those inside stories, the good and the bad and the ugly and whatnot. But now let's. What should we talk about first? Your DC comic or your book? What would you like to talk about first?
Well, the DC comic. Going back to improv, I was in Second City, and had auditioned to get into the grad program. And Ron West was the director of the team that I got picked to be on. And we were given an assignment. There were 4 women and 4 men on the team. And Ron just wanted a sketch. You know, everybody had to go home and write a sketch that had all 4 women. You could add the men if you wanted, but everything had to have the 4 women. And I had been kind of playing around with this Yeti character that kind of sounded like my Zoe Deschanel and my Yeti sounded they were the same. And I, you know, she had appeared at IO a couple of times, and you know, it's like a go-to, you know, if a show's not going well, you can always pull out, you know, a go-to character kind of thing. And I was on my way to, because I worked at DC Comics and Warner Brothers, and I was on my way to WonderCon in Anaheim, and it was like early, it was like it was a Friday morning. And I had lived in Glendale at the time, off the 5 freeway. Now I'm going to sound like the Californians. And I had just gotten on the 110 over by Chavez Ravine, go Dodgers. And, you know, there's Police Academy Road. And so here I am, I'm like, oh, you know, at some point I need to come up with the sketch, but I have to work all weekend because I'll be at WonderCon. And I pass the Police Academy Road, and all of a sudden in my head, I'm thinking Charlie's Angels, you know, once upon a time, 3 little girls went to the police academy. And I'm like, and you can kind of see the beginning of Charlie's Angels. And I'm like, holy shit, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go write a Charlie's Angels sketch plus a Sasquatch or plus a Yeti. And that's what I ended up doing. And through that process, it went from Yeti detective to Sasquatch detective. And it ended up anchoring my grad program, my grad show that ran like 7 or 8 nights at, you know, weeks at Second City. And then several of the editors from DC had come in, and they were like, oh, has Dan seen this? He's the publisher. And I'm like, I don't know. He'll come at some point, I guess. And then he did. And then, of course, he gave me notes. And I'm like, dude, church and state. And I took them, but they weren't for that sketch. They were for something else that I had written. And so then he pulled me in his office one day and was like, hey, what are you going to do with Sasquatch Detective? And I'm like, well, I was probably going to flesh her out as like an animated show. And he was like, well, why don't we put it as an you have to introduce characters, you know, kind of gradually. So what if we put her in the back of Mark Russell's Exit Stage Left, the Snagglepuss Chronicles? So that's how she came. She was supposed to be in all 6, but then we had drama with the artist and wasn't able to get the work done. She's in the middle of a divorce or something. And so Sasquatch Detective only ended up in 5 of those. And then I was asked to do a one-shot. And so that way we were going to compile those 5 stories, and then they gave me X amount of pages that I could tell whatever I wanted. And I went ahead and created an origin story in the beginning, and then tied everything back to the stories that you would hit with that one last page at the very end. That was like, oh shit, well, you know. So that's what happened with that. And then it's been pitched a couple of times, and I own the IP. because I worked at DC Comics, I was not paid. So because it was conflict of interest, so I retained the IP for it. And, so it's been pitched around a couple of times, and it's like it gets greenlit and it's getting ready to, we're waiting for this and this, and then AT&T buys Warner Brothers, and then they cut this and they destroy this program, and you're like, okay, there went that. So, and that's life in showbiz. So that's kind of where she's at. But then also, I can talk about it now, but I couldn't back then. But I was also freelance writing for Disney.
Okay.
When I was at DC Comics. So, for your Amazon, and I was able to prove that it wasn't a conflict of interest because Warner Brothers didn't have anything like it at the time. So when so for Disney, it was for Amazon Echo Dot for kids. So I wrote Zootopia sketches, The Incredibles, and of course that was with, for Zootopia it was Jennifer Goodwin and Jason Bateman came in and recorded, and then, Sarah Val for The Incredibles, and then it became dailies, which was like The Princess and the Frog and The Little Mermaid and Cars. Boo, don't like Cars. Mickey and Friends. But then the coolest thing that I did get to do was when they were shutting down that part, they had Star Wars Choose Your Own Destiny. And so they had hired me to take the books, 4 different Star Wars Choose Your Destiny books, and put them into a format to where you could go into a record booth with. So, and the cool thing with that was I actually got to write Huntanese for Jabba the Hutt. And then, of course, Lucas had to sign off on my new Huntanese lines of dialogue that I had to write. So I did, Luke and Leia, Han and Chewie, Poe and Finn, and Anakin and Obi-Wan. Those were the 4 books that I did.
Wow, amazing. Man, you've had quite a prolific career as a writer and author and whatnot. Speaking of which, being an author, look what I found.
What? Yeah.
I'm loving your book. How did this come about?
It took years to write. Years. And again, going back to the story in New York City where I would go out and the homeless person would chuck egg salad at me, or a bird would take a poop on me. Every time if I went to the bathroom, I could come back with a story. You name it, it just random stuff would happen. My dad used to introduce me as his daughter that had the black cloud that followed her everywhere she went. Thank you. So if I went through a breakup or something, or if I had acne, and I didn't want to go out on a Friday or Saturday night, I would just write, and I would write. And I always had journals. Oh my God, I bet I have 50 or 60 journals in my apartment. And I would just write stuff down. And then then every now and then I would just pull out my computer and start writing these stories. And so for the longest time, the name of the book was called Jesus Hates Me. It was called Jesus Hates Me, but My Mother Tolerates Me, 70 Short Stories to give you a vague idea why. And everyone loved it except my mother. And she actually cried.
Oh, no.
It hurts that now that every now and then friends will be like, oh, that was the better title. And I'm like, as long as she's still alive, I can't do it. So I compromised, and that's why it's called None of This Is Going According to Plan. And it's funny because it's been picked up for a sequel, which, everyone's like, what are you calling this one? And I'm like, well, we all saw I Know What You Did Last Summer. And then the sequel was I Still Know What You Did Last Summer. So the sequel is Still None of This Is Going According to Plan. And, the funny thing is, when I went to go, because see, I have it on my end too. And available on Amazon and barnesandnoble.com. And I think it's on sale right now, y'all, on Amazon. But when we were supposed to be getting this back from the printer, and the printer was in Tennessee, and I was at my publisher's house, John, who is a wonderful human being, and we were waiting for the book to arrive through FedEx, just so flip through it, sign off on it, and let it go live, and then it went missing. Of course, FedEx also. And remember, I told you that my blind cat with no eyes would come up at some point. She just here she is. Here's socialite mom. She doesn't have any eyes. But
how did she lose her eyes?
She had glaucoma and ulcers when she was a kitty, and so I'm like, she's the bravest thing ever. And if there's a noise at the door, she runs towards it where everyone else runs away. So I'm like, she'll show up at some point. I'm sitting on a yoga ball, and I've been through 9 yoga balls in the last year and a half because if you're not sitting correctly, you hear and it's her jumping up on it. But anyway, the books went missing. And FedEx lost them. We couldn't figure out. And so it cost us 2 weeks from letting the book go live. And so the printer had to print new ones and then ship it back out FedEx. And so we're like, all right, well, that was weird. But then a few weeks later, you start hearing all over the news, and then it made national headlines, that there were train robberies in Los Angeles. So as with all the brazen robberies that are just happening now, as trains would be, with merchandise coming in packages into East LA, they'd slow down to 5 miles an hour, and people are just jumping on the back of the trains, bolt cutters, emptying out stuff, and then their friends were stealing it and everything. So we were like, oh my God, that's where the books train robbery.
Yeah, I mean, it's the hottest book right now amongst Chicanos in East LA. So I'm telling you, that's fantastic that you got the book out there. Very organic. It's so funny because it's the same thing I think happened to was it Dan Aykroyd, and a shipment of his Crystal Head vodka, that went missing, and people were just it was well, at least people out there are enjoying it, type of a thing. So I wonder who has your book. If anyone has it,
I'm sure they opened it and just dumped it on the train tracks, because then this went on for once, this had been going on for months, and then once the press got a hold of it and the news and stuff, and then it was a daily thing of people showing just people robbing, people walking across the street or across the bridge. Just random people were shooting people robbing trains and putting it on TikTok and Instagram.
oh
and
my God.
Wasn't until, and the tracks were, it was just thousands and thousands of packages. And it wasn't until one of the trains derailed that they finally cleaned it up. And the joke was that this book is over 400 pages. It's thick. And I'm like, oh, I bet this was what derailed it.
I wouldn't doubt it. The book. Your luck is carried in this book. So that's amazing. It's a solid, yeah. I'm going to use it for self-defense. If I ever get attacked here, I'll chuck it at someone.
Cut right across the jugular. Yeah,
Yep,
I'm here for you.
Thank you. Who did the artwork for it?
Her name is Emma Kubert. And for any of you comic book fans, if you know the name Joe or Andy Kubert, famous comic book artists, and there's even the Kubert School of Art. Emma is Joe's granddaughter and Andy's daughter, and so she did it for me. And I wanted the cover, and of course, as far as I knew, Tanya Lightfoot, Sasquatch detective, who's named after a disgraced ice skater. I love Tanya Harding. I wanted her on here as an Easter egg, and just tiny, and then she made her bigger than me. And so I was like, oh shit, I need to, so I ended up telling a story of how when MADtv was rebooted, Bruce Letty, who's the main director, had called me and asked me if I could audition for the reboot. And I was like, I can, but I have a small problem. I had a black eye. I had my first black eye ever. And it was a stage accident at Second City. And so I end up telling that story to justify a Sasquatch being on the cover. But the chalk outline of the bloody body, these are all Easter eggs to stories in the book. So the sunken boat, there's 3 different $5. There's like a story, 3 different stories called the $5 trifecta that's in there. Soda cans, which is gonna go back to Coca-Cola, which is why I have a Coke machine behind me. A ghost. Do you mention ghosts? I see dead people. This dentures and a shovel. I had been dating this jerk face, my live-in boyfriend. It's just a story about how his grandmother accidentally got buried that day without her dentures, and I may have volunteered to go dig her up and put the dentures back in her casket. So it's just a lot of Easter eggs of stuff.
This is amazing. Folks, please, if you can, pick this up. It is on Amazon. It's on. Did you say Barnes and Noble, or what's the other one?
It's on barnesandnoble.com. I think we are working on right now trying to get it into Barnes and Noble. I have an awesome publicist, Jennifer Perry, who is trying to, because it's a mom and pop publishing company. Sideshow Media. John Booker is my is the publisher. And but anyway, it's definitely available on Amazon. Again, like I said, I think it's on sale. And then I think it's available on barnesandnoble.com as well. But hopefully,
I love that maybe you know your audience because of what you put here. If you have a few minutes to kill on the subway, need some entertainment before you fall asleep, or unexpected time on the toilet, look no further. Brandee's here to share her shame with you. I love that. And I am such a big fan, of course, of Tina Fey, Amy Poehler, and David Sedaris. It's brilliant. He is one of my favorite authors as well, as is Tina Fey and Amy Poehler and Rachel Dratch and all these brilliant improvisers from Chicago. And of course, Me Talk Pretty is one of my favorite books from David Sedaris, and I'm a big fan of Amy Sedaris as well. So you're a great company, and I think that this book is a hit, and I think people should buy it and order it not right now. Finish watching this and then go order it, or multitask.
Yeah.
And normally, I think we did this backwards because I was going to ask you about where you grew up. I know that your bio was very interesting in that your ethnicity? Well, it was Quaker. I don't think Quaker is an ethnicity, but is that true?
Well, no, I grew up Cherokee Indian, and then we grew up Quaker. So like my mom's 100%, so I'm 50. So, but so we have Indian heritage, but at the same time, my dad's Irish, and it's like, hey, we need to instill values or something in these kids. And so we went to the Friends Church, Rose Hill, Kansas. And as kids, we went to, we were Quakers. And I just remember as a kid, because again, I'm obsessed with cemeteries and I love taking photos, and I just love going to cemeteries. And which came in so handy during the pandemic. Like, hey, nobody has COVID here alive. You can't get me. But as kids, our chores as Quakers, every family had chores, and ours was to take care of the local cemetery. And I was just obsessed with children's graves, and so I always made sure they were clean. And I would pick dandelion. My parents are like running lawnmowers over here. It wasn't that big of a cemetery. It's just like maybe 2 or 3 acres. But I'm out picking with a little paintbrush, making sure all the babies' graves are clean, and then putting little dandelions on their graves for them. So hobby. You gotta have a hobby, even if you're 5.
And what better hobby than hanging out at a cemetery cleaning other children's graves that died in the 1800s?
Off of a dirt road surrounded by a cow pasture. Yeah, what's up, Kansas?
You know what? You've described my ex-wife's family farm in Mount Hope, Kansas, which is right outside of Wichita.
Yep.
You know, they had a land grant back in the 1850s by like President Grant. They have, I believe, or they had the oldest wood frame house in Kansas on this property in Mount Hope, and on that property there is Star Cemetery, which is exactly as you describe it. It's a small patch of land, I don't know, maybe an acre, with family, but they donated it to the county. They donated it to the county, and yeah, it's. I think the county now takes care of it, but it sits on their land. And you see all these headstones with deaths from the 1800s, early 1900s, and just so much history there. So there's something very appealing about that cemetery, those cemeteries.
Yeah.
Amazing. And you grew up in Kansas then?
Yes.
Have you done anything because there are other famous people from Kansas, correct? I mean, isn't like Sudeikis from Kansas and
Eric Street, Paul Rudd. Yeah, I remember. I'm just gonna keep. I'm just like I'm doing a Herald. I'm just bringing stuff back. I remember I was doing a tournament, a state tournament, and it was like whatever state you were from, you were kind of thrown together. And there were 3 or 4 of us from Kansas. And I remember we were like, how do we get a hold of Sudeikis, Rudd, and Street, and we can dominate?
Yes.
And I think we were able, because Sudeikis also went to KU, but I met him. I hadn't seen him. The thing is, I only met him like once, and I was at a taping of Saturday Night Live because I may be obsessed with U2, and U2 was the musical guest that night. And do you remember Rich Tallarico? Tallarico was a writer on SNL, and he invited me to fly out, and he was just like, "Hey, do you want to come to the taping?" I'm like, yes. So during the rehearsal, we were in the green room with Tina Fey and Chris Purnell. Oh my God, I butchered his name. But he was so sweet and kind. So was Tina. And so we hung out in the green room for the camera blocking, and then we went into the stands for the actual taping. But I want to say at one point Sudeikis had come up to the green room, and I met him like very briefly, but
amazing.
Ted
Lasso, come on. I mean, I knew him from the Chicago days, and then just would always either run into him. So we've always had this connection, and I like letting people know that George Wendt is his uncle. Well, sometimes people don't know that Jason Sudeikis' uncle is George Wendt. But yeah, no, I'm friends with Rich Tallarico. Great guy. He was a writer at. Did you know him when he was at MADtv? Because he was also a writer at Mad and then SNL.
Yeah, that's how I knew him. Because he was there for many, many years, and so was I. So yeah, that's how I know Tallarico, and that's how So when I started the whole improv thing, it was like even if I didn't know people at IO, I would go see Dasrisky because I knew Tallarico. So
yeah, it's another great. All these great names: Bob Dassey, Rich Tallarico, and PJ Jagodowski, right? Was that Dasrisky? Yeah, it must have been.
Yeah.
Wonderful. If people want to follow you, if people want to get a hold of you, I did put your links.
Here's Maura.
Why? She's back. She's blind. So she's been blind her whole life?
No, she was born with both of her eyes, and then I think she was like 3 or 4 months old when she lost the first eye. They had to the rescue group had to have the surgery done, and she lost her eye. Then when I adopted her, she only had the one eye, and they were like, "Oh, she's going to live a nice, long, happy life." And I had insurance for her, And then I think I had her 35 days, and then her good eye, her only eye, went south, kind of swelled up like an alien, and took her to an eye specialist and everything. And we tried for 2 weeks to try and, I mean, would wake up every few hours, like in the middle of the night, and make sure, you had to do a combination of drops and stuff trying to save it, and they couldn't. So she's been without both eyes now for almost 2 years. But the night that she came home from the hospital, she played for like 9 hours straight, and she's super smart. She loves crinkle balls. She'll take them into the bathtub because she can control the roll. So every night I take a shower, I have to check the bathtub for toys.
Oh,
so she just takes stuff in there, and we'll play with them for hours. So, I mean, she has other toys and stuff, but she loves the bathtub. So she's very smart.
That's amazing. Brandee, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to be here. And folks, please follow Brandee at either, twitter.com, Brandee Stilwell, one word, or there's also twitter.com, is it Sasquatch D as in David, DET? Sasquatch Detective, DET, or on Instagram, which is instagram.com/Brandee_Stilwell. And of course, follow me at paulvato.com and vato.tv. And anything else you'd like to promote?
No, I just, I think the theme of this book is, I was always that person that, like if there's a race, I was the one that always came in like 5th or 7th or 9th. I could be racing with 2,000 people, but I'm like 5th or 7th or 9th, and you'll never hear about me. And that's because, I fell in an open manhole, or I didn't read the directions correctly, or I made a right instead of a left. But I think the main point of this book is that if you get knocked down 7 times, you got to get back up 8. You just got to keep getting back up and get back up and get back up and get back up. And, it's Tallarico that you used to always say to me, it's not a race. None of this is a race, Brandee. So you just, and I'm like, so kind of taking, as an improviser, you would always want to take as much information. You don't want to be Craig Kukowski. You don't want to be Rich Tallarico, but you want to take a little piece of Khaki, a little piece of Tallarico, a little piece of Dassey, Ron West, and then make it your own. And, because you have your own DNA, but if you can take a little, knowledge from an education from other people, Jamie Moyer, and become your own person. But again, life is tough. The road is never, ever freaking easy. Well, it is for some people, but not from this one. And that's why I'm just, the motto is you get knocked down 7, you just got to get back up 8. So
amazing. Well, I think as long as we take amazing. That's it. As long as we take that DNA from those wonderful people and not Ron Jeremy, I think we'll be okay.
Lots and lots of hot water, soap, and hand sanitizer.
Amazing.
Some bleach too.
And some bleach. Well, Brandee, thank you so much again for being here. I appreciate your time, and I would love for you to do this again if you'd like to promote anything else, or if you'd like to catch up again. You are truly an inspiration.
Thank you so much for having me. It was such a nice surprise to see. To see you in my inbox, and I'm like, oh, Paul, what's up? Yeah, I would love to do this. This was so much fun. Thank you.
You got it, my friend. You got it. All right, folks, the show has come to an end. I want to thank everyone that was here, and of course, for anyone that listens to it on the replay. Thank you, guys.
And ese hombre holding up the bottle. Look a little closer, cigar and Moscato. An actor in improv coming from Chicago. Outdoor, make way for Paul Vato.